Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Izuku stops holding back, part 1. Subscribe if you enjoy the video, let's begin the story. Losing isn't horrible, Tenya decides. It isn't about losing, because the fight was fair and he'd given it his all. After all, Todoroki was known to be the strongest of his classmates. But even if he decides the losing isn't horrible, he can't rid himself of the urge to cry. Something lays heavily on his shoulders and he doesn't like thinking he's a failure, but he also can't quite help it. Everything is a mess, he concludes. The buzzing of his phone snaps him out of it for a moment, though it all crushes in on him even more when he sees the caller ID. The words burn, but he's glad that his brother thought to call it all. Aren't you at work? It's terrible for a hero to take time off like this. Tenya? I heard you nearly beat Todoroki-san. That's incredible. Tenya's brain short circuits. How did you hear that? It was only finished a few minutes ago. I had to drag a kid out of an intersection before a car got him and he recognized me, I guess. Once I made sure he was alright, he mentioned that he was caught up in your match. Are you alright? Tenya's chest tightens till he can barely breathe. I know it was a fair match and that Todoroki is strong, but Tenya. No matter what, you did incredible making it that far. You're only going to get better. Feeling sad isn't wrong, it's human. Are you okay? Tenya breaks down after that, and all records of Ingenium's traffic stop in Hosu are forgotten by the Iidas. Itsuki hears about the beach getting cleaned up and passing from his mother. At first, he ignores it. Some beach getting cleaned up means absolutely nothing in the face of Kitsuki's plan. Then his dad mentions something about how public service projects should get recognized more, and that actually catches his ear. He'd considered everything about becoming the best hero right. People could think he had a shitty personality, but it didn't mean anything in the face of his potential and his work ethic. But this had gotten his mother's attention. That took an act from the gods. In hindsight, it's a great plan. Cleaning a beach fixes a public spot and restores the area. Everyone in the neighborhood is talking about it because now there's a beach within walking distance. Business is steadily growing from the newfound popularity and morale is higher than Kitsuki has seen in a while. He asks around. When no one knows who cleaned it up or why, he goes to the internet. After the 5th article citing it as one of 3 different anonymous public service projects happening around their neighborhood, Kitsuki can't help but wonder who's doing it. Even if the hero industry is about being heroic, most of them do things like this as a publicity stunt. The pin goes in his phone on each of the 3 locations. He takes a couple of people from class 1 down to the beach to shut up his mother and prove he's not totally devoid of personality. The beach doesn't suck. Igerm is just exiting the 3rd athletics shop when someone snags him by the elbow and drags him to the railing of the mall. He barely catches green eyes and dark curly hair before the stranger points to someone in a black hoodie down on the 1st floor. Sorry to drag you away, but I know who you are and I need you to tell me if you recognize that person. The stranger tells him in a hushed tone, glancing over their shoulders suspiciously. Igerm frowns and gets ready to harden up his right side, keeping his eyes on the black hoodie. After a few seconds, he sees a scraggly hand reach up and scratch at something beneath the hood, revealing long, tangled blue hair. The stranger is shaking him out of a haze a few moments later, looking at him with concern clear on his face. Are you okay? Do you know them? I think maybe it's a villain. I couldn't see much. Who are you? What? Look, there's no time. He's dragging Igerm from the railing, muttering 1,000,000 kilometers per second. Aren't you here with your class? You need to get out of here, call the police. I'll track him, here's my number just in case, okay? Igerm gapes as the stranger hops the railing and lands in the main walkway like it's nothing, power walking after the black hoodie. Before he can stand there paralyzed, the stranger's words are replaying through his head and he's moving, whipping out his phone and clutching a scrap of paper in one hand. No one questions his emergency message to meet up outside and within 15 minutes everyone who came to the mall is standing there with him. Uraraka takes one look at the way his hand is shaking and turns deadly serious, showing off a vibe that Igerm really wishes he could imitate. What happened? I think Shigaraki followed us here. Everyone freezes, staring at him as he continues. A guy pulled me aside on the 2nd floor and pointed at him. I called the cops and they're on the way, but that guy, he took off after Shigaraki before I could do anything. I froze up. Someone went after Shigaraki. Germ is the only one whose voice actually cuts through the group's panic. Wait, did he know who it was he could get killed? Igerm replays the scene in his mind and pales. I didn't tell him who it was, just that it was a villain. Shit. Before they can do anything about it, the police are there. Here he tells the story and hands them the crumpled piece of paper, to which they're all told to leave immediately and get home safely. Igerm spends the entire train ride imagining a rotting corpse left in an alley or somewhere inventive. He can't help but feel guilty for it. Izawa calls him aside the next day and he can't help but feel like it's the end of his career at UA. When he retells the story, trying hard to remember something about the stranger besides green eyes, Aizawa remains lifeless the entire time. You did the right thing, Kirishima. The boy who went after Shigaraki is at fault for being reckless, but they've already scolded him. Everything is being taken care of. Good job keeping a level head. Aizawa pats him on the shoulder and sends him back to class. The face is already fading from his memory, though he can't forget someone throwing themselves off the second story of a mall just to go chasing a possible villain. Whatever happened, he can't help but feel like they got lucky. If what Aizawa said is true, then the kid made it out safely. Maybe they caught a break for once. Meetings with Tsukauchi will probably always be under horrible circumstances. Their raid on the league's headquarters failed miserably, and Toshinori really just wants to punch something, but instead they're going out for coffee. Neither of them mentions the time, because coffee is just a really horrible excuse to take a little time away from work. I can't deny I'm a little glad. If they'd actually been there and we'd fought them tonight, we were really understaffed. Tsukauchi groans. All we had was the words of a random high school student. I'm shocked we had as much support as we did. Toshinori sighs. What are kids thinking these days, charging into villain attacks and chasing after villains like this? Oh, I almost forgot. Tsukauchi flips a folder onto the table, smirking at him over the rim of his cup. I promised you the file on the kid, right? Since this is becoming a thing for you. I'd just like to thank him for his bravery. Toshinori has barely opened the file when he feels his wound begin to twitch and a rapid headache coming on. Toshinori. Hey, are you okay? Tsukauchi is already up out of his seat before Toshinori can wave him off, coughing and trying to hold off the blood. He really doesn't want to make a scene. Sorry, but I probably shouldn't be surprised. This boy, it's the same person as the slime villain incident I told you about. He slides the file back, unable to scrub the pictures and memories from his brain. Are you joking? Well, I guess it makes sense. You'd have horrible luck if you found two kids so similar to you. I'm surprised though. Didn't you say the kid was pretty scrawny? Tsukauchi cocks an eyebrow at the file and sets it back down. Yeah. Barely bigger than a twig, really. I mean, it's not like I got to see, but he really must have changed a lot since that little incident. He tracked Shigaraki pretty far. Everyone felt pretty bad for telling him off about it. Tsukauchi sighs. Ah, of course they did. Toshinori couldn't help flinching. Something the matter? It was like that during the first incident too. The heroes made the right call, but Bakugo needed help. Midoriya rushed in, and afterward he had several heroes telling him how reckless he was. I feel a bit bad for it. He's been essential in two different villain incidents, and both times he's been reprimanded for it. I know he needs to be, that we need to tell him to leave things alone, but still, Tsukauchi chuckles. You two really are alike, aren't you? Toshinori isn't sure what to say to that. Midoriya can't be like him. Sure, the kid had a dream, and he'd thrown himself into danger on instinct, but no. Finding the boy at this point is a lost cause. Don't even think about it, Toshinori. Tsukauchi growls. I'm not. A bit of blood spilled over his lip at that. Toshinori hates that it leaks when he's flustered. Really, I doubt we're very much alike at all. Good. I hope so. He's already got 2 incidents too many on file for my liking. I guess so, everyone would say the same thing, I suppose. Summer goes by without a hitch, surprisingly. Most of Class 1 ends up failing the exam for provisional licenses, despite how many of them get close. Aizawa forbids them from going back for the extra courses on the grounds that too many of them would be out, and then the school goes ahead and prevents them from doing internships after all the incidents they've had. Ichako doesn't know whether or not she's disappointed or relieved after it's all said and done. Class 1B seems to be doing a bit better, though only because a few of them got their licenses. She's out grocery shopping on a Sunday, drifting between shops and thinking about school when the sound of a car accident has her sprinting down the block and praying that no one is hurt. When she finally reaches the intersection, she freezes, staring at the street as she tries processing what she's seeing. The car is there, stopped halfway through the crosswalk, with the engine compartment caved in, as if the driver had slammed into a concrete pillar. Lying in the street is a woman curled around her child. Everyone on the block has frozen and is caught staring at what remains of the car's engine. Ichako is 2 steps into the intersection when a grunt makes her stop again. Her jaw drops as someone climbs out of the wreckage of the engine and walks over to the woman and her child. Are you okay? Did I push you too hard? For a half hour, Ichako drifts on the edges of the accident. Police show up and question the driver. No, I didn't run a red light, I would never, of course I was going the speed limit. The woman, my baby, she just ran in the intersection and it said walk, but I saw the car crossing and I just moved and then we were flying. And, oddly enough, the boy who'd gotten hit, she isn't close enough to hear his statement. Then, just as suddenly as it all started, it's gone. She watches the car get towed away and the woman and her daughter are leaving in an ambulance just to be sure. After a few minutes, she looks around and sees the boy across the street, still talking with the officer. It looks almost like he's getting scolded and then he's just wandering off and the officer is there, talking on the phone. Before she knows what she's doing, Achako is walking up to the police officer. "Was that boy okay? The one who got hit by the car?" The officer blinks, then sighs, then slips their phone into their pocket. "Everything is fine, miss, nobody was hurt. The driver may have some hairline fractures, considering the speed he was going, but everything looks like it turned out alright. I was worried for a bit since the kid was acting strangely, but I think he was just nervous." He won't say anything more than that, and Achako can't do anything other than leave it at that. She had barely caught a glimpse of the boy, other than a shredded high school uniform and dark hair. The next day, she wanders into class and finds Mina and Kirishima staring at a video on Mina's phone. "Oh, is that an accident?" Spills out before she can really think about it, and suddenly Mina is on her for details. Once she tells them what happened, Kirishima frowns and rewinds the video. "I swear, that guy looks almost like the one who was a Kiyashi." Mina asks a bunch of questions after that, and Achako files that little tidbit away in the back of her head. She isn't sure what is her attention, but something seems strange. The police officer seemed uncomfortable when she approached him. And if that boy was the same person, just who was he? Mirio thought he'd seen everything. He'd been taught how to use his quirk properly by a man who could see the future. All Might had exposed the secrets of Japan's champions, then offered to train him for the role. Sir had been proud when he accepted the offer for training. While out on patrol, one of his friends had been hit by a bullet that took his quirk away for a night. Out of all his classmates, his internship had been the most in-depth, the most intensive, and he was sure that he'd started seeing the world for what it truly was. Night Eye's agency investigation into the 8 precepts of death was a secret. People were focused on the League of Villains after their recent moves and the failed raid, which left Sir with the job of cutting the head off of the sleeping snake, apparently. Mirio wasn't a huge part of it. His only job was to keep up the patrols and try to maintain the peace while Sir went investigating. Everything was supposed to be normal. It goes like this. Mirio is walking down the street a few blocks from Sir's agency, doing his patrols as normal, when he sees Overhaul himself wandering down the street. A pair of his direct subordinates walk beside him, judging from the plague masks on their faces and the killing intent rolling off of them, has every civilian avoiding them by a full block. It doesn't help that they're walking in the middle of the street and the pair are slowly wrecking any car that comes too close. Barriers protect them, and the big one's punch destroys any vehicle that gets too close to Overhaul's path. Before he can step in or call Sir, there's a civilian walking into the street out of nowhere looking determined to do something. Mirio really doesn't like it, but Overhaul stops a decent way away and stares at the boy when he doesn't move out of their path. "Are you a hero? Coming to do the job even off duty?" he calls. Mirio chews his lip, praying that Sir will pick up because this looks really, really bad. "You're the one who hurt her, aren't you?" the civilian asks, fists clenched so tight he's shaking. Emotions roll across his face in waves. Fear, nerves, anger, desperation, determination. When Sir sends his phone to voicemail and sends a text, Mirio shoves his phone in his pocket and gets ready to rush in. Overhaul is already talking. "Oh? So you're the one who took her from me. Give her back. She's necessary for my goals," he calls. On either side, the henchmen shift and get ready for a slaughter. "I won't let you hurt anyone else," civilian calls out, forming a rough fighting stance. Mirio screams internally because this kid obviously hasn't fought anyone before and he's already phasing through a parked vehicle when the big guy with fists of steel rushes out to attack. Mirio is popping out of the ground in a rush when the stranger takes the punch against his arms. He phases through the attack coming his way and pauses on the other end of the street, eyes locked on the civilian. The pavement beneath his feet is cracked, nearly shattered from the force of the blow, and he's pushed back a full meter, but otherwise he's totally fine. Everyone seems just as surprised that he made it out as Mirio is, which he tries not to think about. "You took a punch, huh? Then I'll just go all out." The thug cackles, rushing in for another blow. Mirio waits, watching as the civilian reforms his stance and makes a slight move to block, this time with one arm. The pair dig a long track through the pavement as the Yakuza continues throwing blows. Each hit has the civilian slowly but surely pushed back, dug nearly past his knees into the street from the force of the onslaught. Mirio is shocked when the civilian is still standing after such an insane number of punches, but when the dust clears and reveals the pair staring one another down, Mirio finds himself shocked for a different reason. Despite blocking most of the punches and taking a few to the chest, the stranger is just a bit dusty. Red like he's running a marathon, but not red from bleeding and bruising. His skin is flushed, not broken, and the muscle beneath is substantial enough that Mirio thinks he must be a hero in training, maybe Fatcom's nephew or something. "Who the hell are you, kid? You got a good quirk, that's for damn sure." No one ever goes 2 rounds with me. The Yakuza cackles again, pointing a finger at the boy. My name's Rappa Kendo. Call me Kendo if you survive this. Deku. The boy states quietly, throwing off the shreds of his shirt and jacket. Mirio frowns as he runs a hand over his body, almost appraising himself. I guess that car thing wasn't just a fluke, whatever. If it keeps me going, I'm not going to complain. Deku settles into a fighting stance, looking more sure of himself now. I guess you're not going to let me take on your boss before you're down and out, are you? He asks, offering a shaky smile. Rappa laughs even louder. Hell no. I haven't had this much fun in too long. Let's go, round 2. The shockwave is definitely unexpected. Rappa freezes, fist locked tight against Deku's, staring at the boy in disbelief. You're gonna fight back, huh? Just how I like it. Compared to the first round, Mirio's eyes can actually track the fight now that Deku is fighting back. Wind tears up and down the street in bursts every time their fists collide. Deku isn't being pushed back anymore. When Rappa speeds up, Deku meets him. Mirio can only stare when their fists begin to blur into streaks of black and white. The street dissolves into a hurricane of wind around the pair. Mirio watches as the heroes arrive. Every single hero stops on the edge of the conflict and stares, waiting because in the end, there's nothing else they can do. Moving against Overhaul is impossible with a random element and the barrier user. The thunderclap breaks across the street as Rappa goes down beneath a right hook from Deku. Everything near the end had been beyond Mirio's eyes, which almost never happens. Only heroes like All Might and Edgeshot move at speeds like that, as far as he knows. When Rappa gets up and wipes the blood from his face, he begins to laugh again. Man, what are you even made of quirk like that, and you're just a brat. Rappa barely steadies himself on his right leg, his form completely shattered when he freezes entirely and glares at Deku. Mirio imagines he missed something, drinking in the injuries on Overhaul's man. Don't lie like that, Dumbus. This is a fight, not a fucking game. This is a battle of men. A million. Sir's voice snaps Mirio from his staring. He hadn't even heard his mentor approaching, which is well, he's not proud of himself. Sir. Report that kid, he came out of nowhere. It seems like he has someone Overhaul is looking for, which may have started the rampage. That person seems to be one of Overhaul's personal guards. I don't think that the boy, who calls himself Deku, is hurt. But he's moving, I saw. Sir presses his glasses up his nose, fingering his seals with his other hand, and glaring between where Overhaul is watching the fight and where Rappa is still screaming at Deku. What set the Yakuza off like that? Is Deku provoking them? No sir. He's been very quiet. He's just been getting better over the course of the fight. Mirio mutters, looking at Rappa's strangled screaming and a look of shame. Resignation. He has no idea what Deku is feeling. Something is off, but whatever it is, it seems to be between them. We can't go after Overhaul like this. I was hoping to save it, but I suppose there's no choice. Sir is already half covering his face, trying to hide the effects of using his quirk when Rappa lunges forward. Mirio is lucky he had just turned back to the fight, but he still isn't sure he was fast enough. The ground breaks as Rappa's chest hits the trench he'd formed from the street and Deku lands gently on the ground beside him. Mirio blinks, staring at the dust cloud where Deku had been standing a moment before. A small burst of cracks lay there beneath the dust, but nothing else. Deku's eyes scan the street after staring at the unconscious Yakuza and settle on him. They're bright green with dark edges, glittering vividly in the sunlight. His hair, Mirio realizes, is the opposite. Black at the roots and green in the light, vivid enough to make up for the complete lack of personality in his features. Other than streaks of dirt and sweat, his expression belies what he's just accomplished. Really, even with his muscles, he's more like Sir than anyone Mirio has ever met. Shorter, sure, but thin, covered in tight compressed muscle that didn't quite show off just how powerful the person really was. Lemillion, did you see him move? Sir whispers. Mirio frowns and shakes his head. No. I wasn't looking right at him, but it looked like 1 second he was standing and the next he was just there. Did he hit the Yakuza, sir? If he did, it was a kick to the shoulders. Sir is straightening, staring at the boy with an obvious frown. For a moment, he was too fast for me. Mirio decides that he hasn't seen everything. This Deku has just shattered his worldview for the he isn't even sure how many times it's happened this year. Really, it's not fair. Deku walks out of the crater, facing Overhaul without flinching. Overhaul stares him down, but they're too far for Mirio to see if Overhaul is angry or just resigned. Resigned to the fact that his spear has just been completely shattered by this stranger. Did you really do it? Did you really use her like that? Deku's voice carries in the quiet that has taken over the street. Mirio guesses that maybe 5 or 10 minutes have passed, more than enough time for the blocks of city around them to quiet down and evacuate. Is this a Class 3 incident yet? He has no idea. Overhaul and his Yakuza would qualify for Class 4 if they had the quirk erasing bullets. Overhaul pulls out a gun, proving that the situation can still get worse. Sir, is he a hero? A sidekick, an apprentice, do you have any idea? Mirio's voice is quiet. He knows protocol says not to interfere because that could make it worse, but Deku can't possibly know. I've never heard of him before. This is new to me, but who would make this their debut? The bubble forms around Deku, which seems to shock him. The heroes stare at his back, waiting for an opportunity. Sir, have you looked? Mirio never asks that question, but this is. No. There are too many unknowns. I can't afford it. The crack stops them both short. Deku flinches back, then reaches up and rips something from his shoulder. I was really hoping to wait and show off the full clip of the finished product, but maybe this will put an end to this foolishness. Return Eri to me. Without your quirk, you're powerless against us. You'll save no one else with this foolishness. Overhaul's projecting his voice, full of barely suppressed rage. The gun is holstered and a glove pulled off slowly. According to their sources, Overhaul's quirk works by touch, and he's probably going to turn Deku into a bloody mess in less than a second if someone doesn't do something. Sir's hand on his shoulder stops Mirio. He grinds his teeth, desperate to jump in and do something, but knowing that his mentor is right. Before Overhaul touches the ground with his hand, Deku disappears again. Mirio blinks when the barrier user flies into the air and a small cloud appears where he'd been standing. Deku lands on the street near Rappa's trench, holding another unconscious Yakuza in his arms and glaring at Overhaul. Their quirk should be gone. Overhaul is frozen, hands suspended a few centimeters over the ground as his eyes narrow towards Deku. These bullets erase quirks. Deku's voice breaks, rising to a fever pitch. You, how dare you? Who are you? Overhaul shouts, touching the ground and erasing the pavement between the pair. Powder fills the air between them, then fades just when Overhaul reforms the earth into a wave of spikes reaching all the way back, stopping bare meters Rappa's unconscious body. I'm the one who saved her from you. Deku's scream breaks the silence in the square. The earth shudders and the spikes vaporize in a rush. Overhaul collapses forward, unconscious, a moment before Deku grinds to a stop a full block away from where he'd started with a pair of trenches tracing his wake. Mirio isn't sure when he started holding his breath, but he doesn't have the words for what just happened. He couldn't have. All Might wouldn't lie to me like this. Sir is quietly steaming, eyes locked on the green-haired boy who stands at the end of the street, looking back at the wreckage. Everyone who watched the battle began to descend from their preferred perches on the outskirts, approaching the unconscious forms of the Yakuza. The blanket of shock covers them all, and Mirio finds himself heading down the street towards Deku before anyone else. Sir has headed to where Overhaul lies unconscious. Before Mirio can reach him, Deku's eyes lock onto him, and the boy seems to snap back to reality. A gust of wind blows down the street as Deku disappears, either running too fast for Mirio to see which direction he went or flying away. Mirio wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, he decides. Apparently, the world is never going to make sense. He just needs to get used to that. Tsurugami Kenji gets the full compiled report 1 month after Deku's debut. He's not entirely surprised when it's Tsukauchi delivering the report because that particular detective has a tendency to end up with cases like these. After a brief bow, Tsukauchi decides to get right to it. He began a year and a half ago when All Might had first moved to the city. Why it begins with the discovery of All Might's secret, Kenji will never know. Maybe the universe has chosen this boy for something, or maybe he has very peculiar luck. Once the slime villain incident is covered, things quieted down. Midoriya apparently decided to do some public service as part of some kind of self-help project. The list is extensive, listing at least 10 projects that have garnered media attention and 3 that no one really noticed. Kenji isn't sure why Tsukauchi is taking the long route until he slides an incident report from just before the summer out of the file. As it turns out, it's the first of many. Midoriya has chased after the League of Villains. He's got 7 counts of throwing himself in to save civilians, only to get caught in the crossfire, a car going 75 kph, a gigantic quirk, a bomb blast, and an apartment complex fire are the most notable of those. 2 months ago, he'd picked up a small child who was lost, running through the streets without a guardian, and apparently was deemed fit to look after her until they discovered who she could go to. Some sort of trauma made it impossible to separate her from Midoriya. When the little girl saw Overhaul destroying downtown, Midoriya had gone after Overhaul to keep the damage to a minimum and keep the little girl safe. She'd confessed that he had done some rather horrible things to her during the incident. People had whispered about Overhaul performing human experiments, but Kenji found himself wishing they could just put an end to the bastard. Hardress was the worst they could do for his kind, sadly. After the incident exploded and the hero industry went on a witch hunt for the suddenly infamous Deku, Tsukauchi had been hard-pressed to get the Midoriyas to see a physician. Near the front of the file, the medical reports confirm the worst rumor of all. Midoriya has no quirk. He's just naturally strong enough to do these things, apparently. A little note near the end expresses some mild horror at Midoriya's daily routine, and Kenji makes a mental note to talk to the boy about it at some point in the near future. When Tsukauchi finishes that, he sheepishly reports that there are another 3 incidents where Midoriya jumped in to save people, using Deku as an alias that people have started pursuing. The internet has a small following for Musatafu's Deku, the Green Wind Vigilante, as the reporters have started calling him. The notes from that are staggeringly in the boy's favor. Even if he's not using a quirk, this can't stand. He's breaking the law by stepping in without a license, even if he is All Might's second coming. Kenji mutters. Tsukauchi coughs, and Kenji's ears detect the barest trace of a snort beneath it. One day I'll find out, Kenji thinks. If he let a detective run around with secrets of the state, what kind of chief was he? Well, sir, we can't really charge him. At worst, we could charge him with obstruction of justice, but the system isn't geared towards punishing Midoriya's type. He doesn't use weapons, and he only ever retaliates in kind. Self-defense ends up covering it, though a good lawyer may be able to argue that he puts himself out there in the first place. I've looked it over, and each incident he gets involved in is one where heroes just don't make it in time. Excepting the overhaul fiasco, of course. Tsukauchi sighs, I'm at the end of my rope. We have the medical reports, incident reports, and the proof that he was there, that he acted without guidance. But between the self-defense case and his lack of any sort of violence on his track record, I couldn't make a case. I know that. In the end, people acting out against villains wasn't something we could easily stop. Heroes exist to separate the civilians and the villains, in the end. His actions are those of a vigilante, quirkless or not. We will pursue them as such. Kenji says, shutting the file and laying it atop a stack of similar cases. The pen scrawls patient 0 over the front and then the folder is left for later. Tsukauchi stiffens as Kenji folds his hands and stares at him. As of right now, I'm taking you off of Midoriya's case. I'll handle this personally and we'll make sure that Midoriya and these other cases are addressed as quickly as possible. Focus on the League of Villains. Our raid seems to have slowed them down, but I'm sure that you've got plenty of leads. Yes, sir. Dismissed. After the detective is gone, Kenji sighs, staring at the small bin of papers on the left side of his desk. His eyes don't linger long before they're drawn to the stack of folders before his computer. Midoriya's file sits on top, but the others are ones he's both more and less, in some ways, familiar with. These files have been building on his desk for 8 months, and he's read each of them enough to know the details by heart. Before he can stare at them for too long, his hand reaches out and smoothly draws the phone from beside his monitor, dialing a number without too much thought. Each time the phone rings, it sends a shiver down his spine. Kenji-san, this is a rare occasion. To what do I owe the pleasure? A chirp bursts from the line all at once, making him jump. His fingers dig into the bags beneath his eyes as he barely suppresses a woof of shock. Nezu. I was hoping that things wouldn't reach this point, but I have some things I need to consult you on. We need to call a meeting. I see. I take it you mean one of those meetings. Should I invite Yogi-san? Kenji sighs, please. I'd like his input on this. I'm going to send you a few files. Look them over, and I'll let you know when I can get everyone together. I'll be moving on the first one soon, but the rest are a bit beyond my reach at the moment. The call doesn't last long. Kenji has always appreciated Nexus' brevity, if only when the two of them are working together. Being in the same room as Nezu is like being in the same room as a snake, and Kenji would prefer to avoid it. He doesn't seem to have a choice if things continue to evolve. 3 attacks hit the UA during October. Eraserhead is attacked by Stain while on patrol one weekend, leaving him nearly blinded and bleeding out in an alley. A new scar stretches across his cheekbones, just beneath his eyes, all the way from temple to temple. One of his students is kidnapped, then murdered on broadcasted video. Shimda has expelled more students than almost anyone in the UA, excepting Nezu and someone named Gran Torino, but this is one of a very small list of incidents where a student lost their lives. The brutality shocks the media so much that no one has the heart to strike out at UA. An entire family of 5 is found burned to a crisp in their home, and when the remains are recovered, every member of the squad wants to throw up or cry. Across the city, Bakugo Kitsuki is attacked by Shigaraki, Kurogiri, and a girl with blonde hair named Toga. During the battle for his life, his left arm is destroyed, and the damage from Shigaraki's quirk spreads all the way to his shoulder and down that side nearly past his ribs. The bones of his shoulder barely remain, and they find a still decaying humerus at the scene. Shimda is sitting in the room, staring at the mess of twisted flesh. The bandages cover it, but his eyes can't help seeing the photos left where his student's arm is supposed to be when a knock at the door startles him. He glances up and for once in his life is shocked enough to gape. A young man with black-green hair and bright green eyes stands there, dressed in shorts and a hoodie, staring wide-eyed at the hospital bed. There's nothing about him that sticks out, but Shimta knows who this is. Nezu showed him the file a few weeks ago. He calls himself Deku in public, but a hospital isn't a public place. Which means, Hakan Midoriya whispers. Shunta closes his eyes as Deku rushes to the bedside, ignoring him entirely. Shunta had tucked himself into an armchair in the corner, out of the way of the family, before he fell asleep there, as horribly intense emotions begin to spill out. For a student who Shunta believed near bereft of a social life, the experience is eye-opening. Concerning, true. But it reminds him of several aftermath moments. This feels intimate. Everyone has someone willing to cry for them. It takes nearly a half hour before the boy calms down and sits on the edge of the bed, staring red-eyed at Bakum without a word. Shunta is a little glad. He doesn't feel like he's intruding anymore, so he pushes himself out of the chair. Midoriya doesn't move, but he hums a slight response when Shunta calls his name. What kind of relationship do you two have, exactly? Shunta asks tentatively. We knew one another as kids. Midoriya mutters, voice still hoarse from his crying, we aren't friends anymore. I haven't even spoken to him in nearly a year. But I couldn't just. Shunta gets that. Mick had been impossible to turn away. He can only assume they have a similar relationship, but Bakum as well, he's a dick. It speaks to Midoriya's character that he showed up at all. The damage is extensive. I sincerely doubt that he'll be able to become a hero after this. His entire left side, sensei. Midoriya's voice cuts him off. Something about the tone sends a skittering trace of fear down Shunta's spine. The boy's eyes are as sharp as raw, shattered gemstones as he speaks, and Shunta is glad that he isn't the one the boy is looking at. If you know Kaken at all, you know he'll find a way. Kabakugo would never let something like this stop him. Midoriya stands up, turning his eyes to the floor and looking drained from his time in the room. I doubt I should be here when he wakes up. But could you promise me something? Shunta's eye twitches. When Midoriya looks up, he's just a teenager. Not a vigilante or an anomaly. His eyes are red and watering, he's exhausted, and his shoulders sag as if he's just been assigned weekend homework. When he tries to get back up, don't stop him. Let him keep trying. Holding him back will only make things worse. Midoriya says quietly. Shunta hates the little part of his soul that reaches out towards kids like this one, because it makes it really, really hard to say no. Especially considering what Midoriya has accomplished, considering his condition. No promises. But depending on how he goes about it, I'll do my best to keep him on the right path. Shunta's eyes narrow. I'll stick by my students till they have no potential or no other choice. Thank you, Eraserhead Sama. Shunta watches Midoriya walk out of the room, shoulders sagging, eyes trained on the ground. He sits on the edge of the bed, staring at Bakum and the bandages covering his left shoulder for several minutes. What the hell is happening to the world, he mutters under his breath. Children were the future, but that didn't mean they were supposed to face it like this. No one deserved to grow up like this. That's what heroes were for. Aizawa keeps Momo back one day after class, just before the end of October, looking more unruly and far more anxious than usual. No one in their class can blame him, considering Bakugo and Aoi Rozu. You're the top of this class. Aizawa growls, fingering a file as if it might rear back and snap at him without ever looking away from her eyes. I'd like to ask how much free time you have. Yue is looking at a prospective student aside from Shinso Hitachi, and we'd like you to tutor him or see if he needs the tutoring in the first place. I have the time, sir, but why not a teacher? Or a tutor? Momo asks, knowing that there must have been who knows how many better options. We're trying to ensure that he comes into the class not feeling ostracized. He's a bit of a special case, and the whole thing is sensitive. All Might and I are busy, and the school is still on high alert after everything that's happened. We need a pro to patrol while we're there in the first place, so it fell to the student in the #1 academic spot. You. Aizawa claims. His stare is drilling holes through her eyes into the back of her head, reminding her that she shouldn't have talked back in the first place. This is a hero's decision after all, what right? If you accept, it will be twice a week when we aren't having heroics. Will that be acceptable? Of course, sensei. Momo looks at the floor as she bows, glad to have the opportunity at all. While mom isn't dreading her first visit, she doesn't know what to expect. Living with her classmates has proven that she's out of her depth in the real world, to say the least. Most of them aren't from wealthy families or notable schools. Iida is the closest student to understanding her situation, considering how cold Todoroki is. The Iida family lies somewhere in between the normal and the Yaoi Rozu level. Even if the girls have taken a liking to her, she doesn't quite understand their lives as well as she'd like to. So, she reminds herself as Aizawa escorts her onto the train, she must not be surprised if things do go as she expects. They get off the train in a nice neighborhood. Small, quaint even, but exactly the sort of thing Momo knows she wouldn't have been prepared for considering a student under special circumstances. UA is the top hero school in the country, for crying out loud, she wasn't trying to be so. Before they can get to their destination, a park explodes. All Might appears out of nowhere, checking on them briefly, and is then held back by Aizawa. This isn't your place, All Might. Let Deku handle it. Momo blinks in shock. She wasn't expecting heroes to leave things to vigilantes, but she guesses it's some sort of protocol she doesn't know and chews her lip as a group of 3 villains go on a rampage in the otherwise peaceful residential area. The gust of wind blows viciously down the street as something lands in the park with the force of a meteor. Momo barely blinks before the villains are piled up on top of one another and left there, unconscious, and another gale howls through the streets. No one else bats an eye, though the heroes stare for a moment before they continue the escort. She swears as Awa mutters something about getting faster by the week as they continue walking, but she decides it's not for her ears and keeps her eyes on the sidewalk. The destination is an apartment in a small complex, the type of place Yaoi Rozu Momo has imagined and visited briefly back when she was small, but not the type of place she is familiar with. When they knock, a small woman with green hair and lines worn into her face, she has to be 40 at the oldest, what could wear someone down like that, greets them at the door. You're just in time, he's just come back from school. I had to force him to sit still and not head out on his normal routine. She chuckles, sounding tired, as she lets them in. Momo pauses in the doorway after her teachers, who seem familiar with the place, as if they've been here before and know Midoriya sent somewhat, and bows at the shoulders. Thank you for having me. My name is Yaoi Rozu Momo. She's interrupted as the woman takes her hands, smiling at her with so much kindness and youth in her smile that Momo is momentarily stunned. Oh my, you're absolutely stunning, aren't you? Please, there's no need to be so formal, you're welcome here Miss Yaoi Rozu. Come in, come in. I heard they were asking a student to tutor my boy, but lord, I never imagined we'd be entertaining a lady. Momo isn't sure when she was placed at the kitchen table and given a cup of tea or exactly what she's been talking with Midoriya-san about. It hits her in a rush and she finds herself staring into her tea for a minute or two trying to cope with it. She resurfaces to the sound of All Might's laughter and a reassuring tap on the shoulder. Midoriya-san is very good at making people feel at home, isn't she young Yaoi Rozu? His smile is completely genuine in a way that Yaoi Rozu only knows after being his student for so long. The number 1 hero has a lot of shadows and shades, and this one is entirely proud and kind-hearted. Yes, it took me by surprise for a moment how natural this felt. My apologies, Midoriya-san. Momo isn't allowed to bow, apparently. The woman is waving her hand dismissively, then taking her hands and smiling at Momo with so much warmth that Momo feels as if she's being hugged. Midoriya-san sighs, Yaoi Rozu-chan, don't apologize for taking a moment to relax. This house is a place where people can feel safe. Our doors are always open to you and your friends. A sudden thump sounds from the door near the entranceway, and both of Momo's teachers freeze as they turn towards the noise. Slowly, the noise turns into the clear sound of someone struggling, bumping into things, and muttering curses under their breath. I believe I'll excuse myself, if I may. Patrols. All Might's smile is forced now, and the air is less warm. More awkward. The number 1 hero excuses himself, pausing by the door in question and staring at it with a strange look on his face. Momo turns her eyes to the tea, wondering just what on earth could make him look like that. Once the front door has shut, they wait a few more minutes before the door in the hall opens and someone falls out, paws their way up the wall onto one foot, and then stumbles into the living room and collapses onto their back again. Momo is on her feet before his back hits the living room floor, gaping at the display of clumsiness. Green eyes stare up at her from the floor, panicked and surrounded by a face red as a tomato. Hi, he stammers. Are you alright? Momo manages to ask. Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm fine. Just, hey, you're Yaoi Rozu-sama, right? From UA, Class 1A. He doesn't make any move to stand up, instead talking to her while rolling his eyes up and lying on the floor. Momo blinks, then remembers the sports festival. Why yes, Aizawa-sensei asked me here to tutor someone. Oh. He blinks, still staring wide-eyed and looking more like a deer in the headlights than someone lying on the floor of their living room. Eraserhead-sama, do you hate me? Not particularly. Aizawa calls, not bothering to take his eyes from his tea. Momo glances back and forth between the two as the boy drags his hands down his face. I assume you're Midoriya-kun and that you're the person I'm here to tutor. She asks uncertainty. Yeah, that's me. Midoriya's eyes are closed and breath is slowly hissing out of his lungs in a way that proves he's equally, if not more, uncomfortable with their situation than she is. Watching Midoriya deflate makes her a little envious. She wishes she could do that. Not that she's uncomfortable with the situation. It's a gift from Aizawa-sensei, and she can't afford to waste it when they consider her at all. Momo tutors Midoriya-kun whenever she doesn't have heroics after school, and after a week it becomes something that she looks forward to. All Might and Aizawa escort her each time, and she becomes used to arriving at the house and spending a few minutes with Aizawa and Midoriya-san before her student ends up fumbling his way out of his room. The tea is never expensive, but always lovely. During November she watches villain incidents bloom all across the district, only to be stopped by something she can only describe as a force of nature. When she hears Mina and Kirishima and Kaminari talking about this new vigilante named Deku, she pins the incidents on him and shelves her curiosity. It festers, though she doesn't think about it too often. After a little while, though, the incidents die down and stop altogether. Oddly enough, despite being clumsy and easily embarrassed, Midoriya-kun is charming and bright. He follows their tutoring easily, taking notes and falling into a trance-like muttering state so often that eventually she just lets it happen until he gets too far off track. The amount of notes he takes is obscene, but considering the number of chemistry texts she's consumed during her middle school days, her conscience won't let her mention it. 3 weeks into their program, Momo notices some problems with her tutoring program. Anytime someone brings up UA, both Midoriya startle and divert the conversation. It took a while for her to notice since Midoriya-kun was prone to combustion when complimented, but avoiding UA isn't his normal flustered denial. When she brings up how much physical training is involved in the hero course, Midoriya only mentions that he focuses on body weight training. He looks uncomfortable enough talking about it that she can't bring herself to push him. Occasionally, while they're studying, police will drop by and ask him questions. It never lasts long, he only takes breaks for 10 or 15 minutes, but it's worrying. She never asks, knowing that it might have something to do with All Might and Aizawa escorting her to the area and Midoriya's supposed consideration for UA admission. She isn't allowed to discuss the sessions with her classmates and apparently, it's stressing them out. Both Midoriyas have apologized for the secrecy, but neither one offers to break it. There's a little girl living with the Midoriyas, a girl named Eri who isn't fond of strangers. She lives in the same room as Midoriya-kun and won't leave it while Momo is visiting unless it's absolutely necessary. No one will talk about why she's there, other than a quiet mention of adopting her to keep her safe. All Might and Midoriya have run into one another exactly twice. The tension of their meetings is so horrible that Momo wonders if maybe Midoriya-kun is a scandal that the number one is paying to keep quiet, a long-lost son or a relative. Part of her knows the idea is ludicrous, but she can't shake it. After a month, her escorts see her to the station and leave her once they reach the stop nearest to Midoriya's home. When she asks All Might, he mentions that the area is almost completely free of villain activity now, and they've decided she isn't in immediate danger. One day, while the three of them are talking about quirks, she idly mentions that she uses her body's mass to create objects. Halfway through his wide-eyed rant on how incredibly amazing and useful her quirk is, he panics and completely destroys the kitchen table. Despite her wide-eyed stare, the pair exchange a look. Midoriya-kun is embarrassed and apologetic, already picking up the pieces, and his mother looks rather exasperated and explain that it happens all the time. Momo didn't realize until after she left that he'd panicked because he mentioned how perfect her figure was. She visits on an odd Sunday after ending up talking with Midoriya-san for an hour. When she asks about Midoriya-kun's muttering habit, his mother grins mischievously and sets down her tea. "Aoi Rozu-chan, would you like to know a secret?" Momo feels a thrill run down her spine because this sort of thing isn't what she expects from the matriarch, her classmates, maybe, and ends up nodding before she can get too nervous. The almighty nameplate hanging from Midoriya-kun's door is adorable and childish just like the boy himself. She almost opens her mouth to say something when Midoriya-san goes to open the closed door, but a finger over Midoriya-san's lip stops her. Inside, Midoriya-kun is sprawled out asleep in his desk chair. A little girl that Momo has only seen once or twice in passing sits on his lap, wrapped in a blanket and cradled in his arms. His chair is leaned back and his snoring rocks the chair slightly every time the pair breathe. Papers, colored pens, and pencils cover his desk in messy piles. It takes a moment for her to realize that most of the papers are notebooks, though a small pile of loose paper lies near the corner. Quietly as possible, the pair step into the room and Momo's eyes widen. Every page is covered in writing, some neat and some narrowly crammed into the margins. She recognized a few of them as subjects they'd gone over during her earlier visits, and more besides. 2 books for math, 1 for English and 3 for history, another 4 for sciences that she could recognize, physics, chemistry, biology, and 1 she didn't know, and a few notebooks with mixed artwork and notes on people. Izuku started muttering when he was little. He probably got it from my rambling, and I was even a little worried at one point. But he had a friend, a boy who was always popular and smiling. That boy was naturally good at things, in a way that Izuku wasn't. Midoriya-san's smile is tight, but not awkward. The other children began picking on him. I'm not sure if watching his friends do well inspired him, or if his dream drove him to do his best. But Izuku grew up working hard, harder than almost anyone, to keep up. During middle school I'd find him here like this occasionally. Momo follows Midoriya-san's gaze to the bookshelf tucked up against the wall, with shelves full of subject textbooks and notebooks and pictures, mostly selfies, some actual pictures, and Midoriya-kun looks awkward in every one of them, nervous but earnestly happy, with people that range from elderly to children of all shapes, sizes, and quirks. She takes a notebook from the wall and flips through it, reading over notes from middle school that must cover every problem and examples with so much commentary, it makes her gut churn just remembering the subject. I never thought about it until he was older. Izuku isn't smart like other people, but he works hard. When he mutters, I think he's trying to keep his thoughts on track. If you're not paying attention, you wouldn't even notice how hard it is for him to stay focused. Sometimes I listen to him talk and it sounds like gibberish, but then he says one thing and it all just slots into place. Midoriya sighs, looking at her son fondly. Momo glances at the boy in the chair. Her chest feels full, and she's afraid that it's all a bit much when she'd only been asking about his bad habit. But it certainly explains a lot. The tutoring comes to a stop midway through December so that they can prepare for exams. As she's typing her number into Midoriya-kun's phone, she can't help but notice that his contacts are limited to his mother and a few people with police force titles by their name. Her contact list is no better, so she doesn't say anything when he clutches at the phone after she hands it back. His smile is so blinding that it infects Momo, and she smiles the entire way back to her dorm. Midoriya's picture is a selfie of Eri sitting in his lap, red eyes looking curiously up at the camera while he grins and flashes a peace sign, apparently his trademark if the photos on his bookshelves are any indication. For Midoriya-san, Momo picks one that Midoriya-kun took, showing Momo and Midoriya-san sitting at the kitchen table grinning, cups of tea paused halfway to their lips, so you don't forget about us, Midoriya-san had told Momo when they took the picture. Momo doesn't return to tutor Midoriya-kun, but instead for a simple visit. She shares her customary cup of tea with Midoriya-san, waiting for her friend to come out of his room. When the door opens and she glances over her shoulder, she finds a tentative little girl with white hair hiding behind Midoriya-kun's leg. Aoi Rozu-san, Midoriya-kun's words caught her eyes, and his eyes held her gaze. Eri would like to meet you, if you don't mind. Oh of course Momo mutters, remaining seated as she watches him lead the little girl around the couch. Up close, Eri is even more adorable than she remembers. The horn is long, not pointed, but easily as tall as her head, and it parts her hair on either side of it. A single long lock of white dangles before her right eye. For the first time, they look at one another. Red isn't the right word for the color of Eri's eyes, because red is the color of Kirishima's eyes, hair, and costume. Eri's eyes glitter like small rubies. When her eyes water and drop towards the floor, it feels like watching petals fall off a rose and fill Momo's chest with something. Hi there, she says, remembering to keep her voice gentle and light, my name is Yaoi Rozu Momo. May I call you Eri-chan? The little girl nods, taking a step towards Midoriya-kun, but not looking towards him. Emotion presses at the insides of her lungs and ribs till her throat tightens to contain the flood. She waits, fighting against the cry welling in her chest, and eventually the little girl looks up and meets her eyes again. I missed you, she whispers, looking uncertain. Momo glances towards Midoriya-kun, who squats down and sets a gentle hand on Eri's shoulder as he answers the unspoken question. Eri likes your voice, and she missed you while you were gone. When she heard you were coming back, she said she wanted to see you, too. Midoriya-kun's grin is all pride, defusing the bomb in mom's chest and leaving her with warm goosebumps rolling down her arms. Then his eyes sparkle and he holds up a hand to whisper, she really likes hugs, but she doesn't want to make you uncomfortable. Eri turns red enough that she could pass for Midoriya-kun's younger sister, but she doesn't flinch when Momo slips off her chair and kneels down, hands out towards the little girl. Eri-chan, Momo's voice cracks as Eri looks up, tears welling and cheeks flush, I don't mind if you feel comfortable. The little girl hesitates, but eventually she slips into the embrace and gently clutches at Momo's shirt, reaching as far over Momo's shoulders as she can. Eri spends the first half of the visit in Momo's lap before she slips away and Midoriya-kun picks her up without a word. The motion is so natural that Momo freezes, teacup halfway to her mouth, and the moment is captured in her mind. Her friend Midoriya-kun is goofy, clumsy, awkward, nerdy, to an extreme, though he tried to hide it, and the complete opposite of what Momo would call a hero. This is not a friend Midoriya. This person's smile is solid, bright, and kind. His eyes don't water or flit from place to place, they meet her gaze at every opportunity and capture her. With Eri in his lap, he sits straight up with his shoulders back instead of slouching. Every move is slow, deliberate, and careful without any hesitation or tremor. It's no surprise that the girl falls asleep in his lap because he radiates safety and warmth in a way Momo hasn't felt since she was a child playing with her parents. Returning his smile is the most natural thing in the world as they giggle and shower the sleeping girl with compliments. For a little while, the weight on her shoulders disappears. It's been a really bad Saturday. Like, bad even by Izuku's standards, and he's not so oblivious that he can't tell that's saying something. He'd spent his entire life being told that he couldn't achieve his dreams, but it hadn't come from heroes, other than that one showboat back when he was small. All Might said he couldn't do it, and he'd been proven right shortly after. When Izuku watches Kaken sulk away, probably exhausted from being held hostage for so long, he can't help but chuckle a little bit. He's right, I didn't help in the end. I guess it's time to give up on that dream. Izuku heaves a sigh and turns around with a smile. Facing his mother will be pretty bad. She's probably worried sick, so he takes a breath and jogs to the corner. -0, He's barely turned the corner when All Might skids into the intersection, glancing around for a moment before deflating. In the grand scheme of things, the hero was only a second too late. -0, Inner is emotional. Izuku almost died, which really makes his mom question the whole hero chasing hobby he picked up. Luckily, he has the best mom in the world and she leaves the subject alone after only poking him a little bit. His head isn't at the dinner table at all. If his mother had told him he was floating back to his bedroom, he wouldn't have been able to tell her any different. The events of the day play through his head until slowly the picture starts to widen until he's lying on his bed looking at pretty much his entire life. I was useless today. He hums internally. The thought isn't new, but it carries more weight now than might have before. There's no chaser, no denial, no reassurance. And now, looking back through his life, he realizes something that he probably should have realized sooner. Outside of PE, he's never trained a day in his life. For a little while he drifts in and out of consciousness. When he finally realizes it's too early for bed, he drags himself to the computer and starts looking into options for becoming a police officer. Of course, there aren't any high school tracks for that, so he's got way too much time compared to the hero track. For good measure, he starts looking into a little bit of fitness material online. Beginner stuff. Around 1 am, he stumbles to bed and does his best to pass out. When he glances at the clock and reads 5:30, he resigns himself to not getting any sleep at all. Breaking in the day with push-ups and crunches, Izuku does a little more research and pins a list to his door before he gets his turn in the bathroom. With a hand on the doorknob, he takes a look at his bedroom and frowns. Maybe there's a little too much All Might now that he thinks about it. Kank doesn't hate him, but the glare she's giving him is making Izuku second guess that. She'd been livid when he collapsed on the track, and having to drag his shivering body into the PE office was probably not fun. Being at school during that first week of his new routine is hell for 2 reasons. 1, he's still a pariah. His friendly neighborhood bully has toned things down, but now Izuku is stuck being Izuku. He still has a target on his back, and now he's jumped into a villain attack. People aren't just going to let that go for some reason. The second reason is that he's genuinely embarrassed. Calling himself weak had apparently been a gross overestimation because he can't even manage 10 push-ups during his second set. And that's just the beginning. Running was, well, he couldn't call it running. For a few days, he honestly considers giving up and just looking for a desk job. Moving is agony, sleep is non-existent, and life is trying. But sitting in his room every night with the heroes looking at him, he can't help but hear their tirades. Some of them are encouraging, some aren't. After those come All Might's words and then Izuku's own commitment. His old dreams turn over in their coffins and he decides one more day can't hurt. Even if he does get a desk job. If he didn't have a quirk, then he'd get stronger. Forget about being a hero, just help whoever you can, however you can. The second week is even more painful than the first. By the start of the third week, he's starting to ignore the agony in his limbs. At some point, they've started retaliating by giving out on him. Which leads to his current problem. So, Midoriya, would you like to explain why you collapsed during the run? She raises an eyebrow over her scowl. Izuku already feels chastised. He really doesn't like where this conversation is going, but at the same time, he's not doing anything wrong. I started training. The woman's expression twists into something hard, forcing him to wave his hands frantically. And not to be a hero. Not that incident a while back. The attack. I just realized that I'm not in great shape and I wanted to try getting stronger. Please don't call my mom. I'm really fine, this is just I'll be fine in a minute. The woman sighs and rolls her eyes, taking a seat across from him. What kind of training are you doing, exactly? Well, I run a few kilometers and I do sets of push-ups, sit-ups and squats, all the standard stuff, you know. I have a list of everything that I run through daily. But I'm really weak. You're doing all of that every day, huh? You should really stagger them. Work different portions of your body on different days. She sighs as her knuckles tighten around her knees. Izuku nods, but he can tell her heart isn't really in it. He considers it for the moment before he decides that would just be giving up, so he nods and mumbles something of an agreement. So, what kind of goals are you working towards, if not being a hero? You know, little things. Izuku trails off under her stare, then shrugs and winces at the motion. Lifting stuff. Lifting stuff. Why yeah. Sorry for all the trouble, sensei. Izuku mutters. The woman just sighs and slaps a hand down on his shoulder, ow, before she stalks towards the door. You're a crazy kid, Midoriya, but I can't tell you what to do. Just don't keep overdoing it. Falling behind in school won't do you any favors. She won't let him do anything in PE for a week. He's a little bit grateful, but he sticks to the routine. If he hurts this badly, then either it's working or he's not doing enough. -0. My tolerance is building slowly, so I'll have to update my diet as well, but it's only been a few weeks. Izuku sighs, itching for one of his notebooks. He twirls his pencil through his fingers casually, though it stumbles once or twice along the way. Ever since his run-in with All Might and what Kaken did to his last notebook, Izuku hasn't brought another one to school. The only problem is that he's ahead in most classes and without something to do. I know most of you are going to head for the hero track. The class erupts in momentary chaos as their history brings up the profession. Kaken remains broody and quiet instead of shutting them up. But let me ask you. What have any of you done for your community? The statement makes Izuku pause and nearly sends his pencil flying. Several other members of the class stare at Kaneki-sensei in confusion. Heroes are known for taking down villains nowadays, but back in the beginning, heroes were known for being paragons of virtue or something like that. Community service, aside from being a great way to keep our nation beautiful, is a fantastic resume builder and a great way to build social approval. A few days later he jogs out to the abandoned beach, a trash heap that's basically a local legend. His body throbs as he jogs in place, scanning the dunes of rusted scrap, and a smile breaks out on his face. -0. After a month, he sets his routine in stone, or sand. In the mornings he runs to Dagaba Beach, does 3 sets of push-ups, sit-ups, squats, leg raises, planks, and side planks, then he throws some of the garbage from the beach into the dumpsters in the parking lot. After school he'll do his homework and run a little more, trying to go the distance in the second half. Each day he makes sure to run 10 kilometers at least, and after 2 months he's reaching 50 push-ups reliably. 100 is still a long way off, but it's progress, and Izuku will take it. The pain is excruciating. Muscles he didn't even know existed without extensive research are out to kill him with extreme prejudice. According to the internet you're supposed to take rest days, not push your muscles to work when they're already hurting. Something about second day pain means you're building muscle. Izuku is already weeks into the rut by the time he actually pays attention to that. Lately he works out to burn away the haze that started clinging to his brain. Extra pain seems to be the easiest way to do that. No one ever said he was smart other than his mother. At least he doesn't collapse in gym class again. -0. When summer rolls around, the pain starts to dissipate. He's 4 months in, working up to 180 reps per session with minute and a half planks, but it catches him by surprise. Suddenly he has all this free time after homework and working out despite working out for 4 to 6 hours a day. He's working a grip trainer at his desk one night, working on the profile for a new hero that debuted earlier that day, when the lead snaps under his pencil and he throws the object down. During a lazy spin, Izuku glances up at the wall and finds the heroes looking down at him. Kamui Woods, Endeavor, Hawks All Might. For the first time in months, he can't just pass out and ignore the way they're all staring at him. It makes him think of the Mudman incident, now long past, and he just feels conflicted. Remembering his old dream makes him both a little sick and a little jittery. Eventually he just sighs and scratches the back of his neck, only to freeze when he realizes where he knows this feeling from. Kaken. It's exactly the same. Growing up, acknowledging that his friend was. The posters started coming down that night. Slowly. Some are rare collectibles, he's not a complete heathen. -0. Fall slowly turns to winter, and by the time October rolls into November, the cold is seeping into just about everything. Despite the slow start that comes with a chill, Izuku figures out very quickly that he can't wear too much during his routine, or he'll just strip it off later. He runs hot, apparently, and the snow doesn't bother him, though he could do without the steam rolling off his arms. A few people have mentioned that his quirk is so useful. After breaking his original goal of 10 kilometers in under 2 hours, Izuku started expanding his run. With a new goal of 20 km, he runs through several of the quieter districts in an effort to learn a little bit more about the city. Occasionally he'll find his way out to parks, but it's harder to run those without people trying to talk to him. This particular day, though, the cold is bad enough to leave patches of ice lying in wait for him. Despite his best efforts, he ends up falling on his ass shortly after he reaches his turning point. "Excuse me," Izuku squeaks at the sound and spins around, nearly spinning too far on the same patch of ice. An old man stares at him through little glasses, somewhat amused by the display. He's wearing a long apron with a familiar name embossed on it, white letters on red, a bold scheme that takes Izuku a moment to read through, and he's shivering. "Ah, sorry, can I help you?" Izuku asks, hoping that he isn't in trouble again. The man smiles at him. I see you on this route every day. I was hoping you might be able to spare a moment to help me with some boxes, they're awfully heavy. He sighs. Izuku doesn't really stop to think about it. The cook seems embarrassed, so he puts on his widest grin and agrees wholeheartedly. After lifting a stack of boxes onto the shelves in the back of the shop, of course the name was familiar, they were standing in front of the restaurant and he runs by it every day, he sticks around and does a few other little things. No one is in the restaurant since it's the beginning of December and it's snowing outside. Eventually, though, he sets the mop back in the storeroom and shuffles towards the door. I need to start heading back home now, but anytime you need help, let me know. I don't mind taking a break from my run to help out. Izuku calls. Wait, please. The old man grabs him by the shoulder and hands him a few bills. I can't ask you to help me so much without paying you. Thank you very much for today. Wait, this is too much, really. It was just a few boxes. And my floors. And the light bulbs and the squeaky seat down near the end of the bar. The old man laughs. Thank you for your help today. Come by anytime you like, I'll give you some good food. Izuku drifts out into the street, pocketing the money with a frown and checking his phone. When he sees how many times his mom called him, he pales. He makes it home in record time, ice be damned, stumbles through the door and flinches when his mother flies in his direction. Are you okay, Izuku? Did something happen? Mom, I'm fine. Izuku has to carefully push her hands away when she tries to grab him, knowing that he's probably cold from being outside. She frowns even more sternly, tears quivering at the corners of her eyes. What were you thinking? 3 hours late, Izuku, I was worried sick. I thought you'd been hit by a car or caught by a villain. I'm so sorry mom. I was just helping someone out. He swallows, pulling the money from his pocket and extending it to her. One of the shops, a restaurant I think, asked me for help moving some heavy stuff. He was old and no one else could help him today. He paid me, but I mean, can we use it for groceries, maybe? The tension has been growing in their house ever since the Mudman incident. Convincing his mom to let him go out jogging boiled down to putting a tracking app on his phone, though she never seems to use it. Despite his best efforts and the lack of hero talk, his mother has only gotten more and more worried recently. He'd have to be a complete idiot to miss the worried expressions turning to frowns of disapproval. Now she's angry and miserable all at once just because he was late coming home. He isn't really sure why she looks at him this way, with shadows clinging to her eyes and anxiety pouring off of her in waves, wringing her hands and taking long breaths between half-angry, half-worried glances. Like he's going to walk out one day and just disappear. It's been months. Nothing even remotely interesting has happened since, and she doesn't know anything but the bare minimum. After a minute or two, she just frowns and closes his hand around the money. Just keep it, Izuku. You earned it, after all. But be careful, okay? Don't just go wandering off with everyone who needs help. She sighs. When she goes to reheat some dinner for him, he feels like he did something wrong. He isn't sure why he keeps hurting people, even though he's trying so hard just to be a decent person. The money doesn't burn a hole in his pocket the way it used to. A year ago, he'd have turned around and bought some kind of collectible, but that was it. It feels like a long time ago now. With a week or two to think about it, he buys a couple textbooks so he can study further ahead of his classes and improve his math. Of course he had no idea that the bookstore's owner would ask for help during his visit, and when he returns home late, it's only the second time, but he feels like this is becoming a problem for some reason. With even more money in his pocket, his mother gives him that look again. At least she doesn't say anything this time. -0. It's been 8 months and a week since his encounter with All Might. The incident has ceased to exist anywhere other than Izuku's restless dreams and the strained silence he maintains with Kaken. Now that December is in full swing, he's in the middle of exam season and he's stuck looking at entrance exams for high school. Without the UA on his choice list, he's suddenly looking at several competitive academic high schools around Tokyo, and there's a very high chance of his getting into all of them. Apparently keeping up his rank over the years was worth it once he forgets about all those pesky hopes and dreams. Ironically, he's helping more people now that he's given up than ever before. Nearly every shop owner on his route has stopped him to talk or ask for help, now that he's proven himself to be a decent person. Word spread faster than he'd expected, and now he has a bit of a bank account. Aside from school materials and some new clothes, he doesn't have anything to spend his money on. His mother won't let him buy things for the house. She's more and more short. Is that the term? Can he even say that without it being ironic? They've always been pretty good, but the cold frowns and the brief responses are making it harder and harder to stay at home. Besides sneaking in a few small things here and there, he ends up putting his money in a bank account that his mother co-signs for him. From there, he focuses on earning the best future he can. Maybe she's just worried that he's lost his direction. Maybe he can fix this. Christmas and the New Year's festivals are held and Izuku drifts around the outskirts. Fireworks are nice, but he doesn't want to wade through all the people. Getting anywhere near the mess reminds him of the pressure in his chest and the days where he has trouble getting out of bed. His mom neglected to go, claiming that she wasn't feeling well. The new yukata he'd bought her is lying on the couch, unused, and Izuku is out staring at the fireworks while he catches his breath. They haven't really talked in a month and he just doesn't know what to say. A tiny part of him really hates the way she looks at him. Even that angry thorn in his side loves her more than anything in the world. It doesn't register when he reaches the top of the steps, already heading down the balcony towards the apartment on pure reflex. He fits the key into the lock easily enough, but he's not paying attention as he steps inside. Leaning against the door to kick off a shoe, he flails a leg and sways, suddenly lurching backwards as his shoe flies into the living room. Whoa, the world slows as Izuku pitches forward trying to correct himself, and his hand tightens on the door to try and hold himself up. Something groans and gives way before he catches himself with his free hand. The resulting explosion of wood chips and noise leaves his ears ringing, already groaning as his body seizes up in response to the panic. Izuku glances back at the entrance and winces when he sees half of his front door in his right hand, the other half hanging onto the frame by a shred of limp wood and paint. Releasing the doorknob exposes a mangled shadow of what it once was. Izuku, his mother, flies in from the living room and stops dead in her tracks, gaping at the carnage on their doorstep. I can fix this, I think, Izuku mumbles, trying to fight the fading buzz in his ears. Izuku, how did you do it? Izuku. I'm fine. Tripped. Izuku sets his half of the door against the frame with a wince and moves to console his mother, who takes a step back and stares at him hysterically. She wasn't feeling well, and now there's cold air pouring into the apartment every second, which is only going to make things so much worse. You tripped. His mother's eyes actually bug out of her head. Izuku didn't know she could do that. What, Izuku, what is going on? I wasn't thinking, Mom, I just tripped. I'm sorry, I'll go and get a new door and screw it in right now, okay? Just stay here, get a coat, don't you dare leave, Midoriya Izuku. His mother's bug-eyed shock turns to anger as he stands up to leave. The fact that she's yelling shocks him so much that he takes a step back. I don't know what's going on, but you tell me the truth right now, young man. Well, Mom, I'm telling the truth, I swear. A few moments later, he shakes himself awake and runs a hand over the sore part of his cheek. I've let you do whatever it is you're doing because I thought maybe it was good for you, Izuku, but this I don't know if it's drugs or I don't know. She throws the blanket on the couch, glaring at him through the tears, and he can only stare blankly back at her in return. You're scaring me, Izuku. If you don't want to tell me, fine. You're grounded and we're going to the doctor on Thursday. You're getting a drug test if you won't tell me what's going on. Mom, I'm not taking drugs. It's hard to talk when he's trying to piece together the missing frames of his life. She slapped him. Pretty hard too, judging from the sting. The cold really isn't helping. I don't know if you think I'm stupid or you think it's okay to just do whatever you want, but I am not stupid, Izuku. I've been keeping track of your phone. Some days you're halfway across Tokyo and you stop for hours at a time. All this workout business, coming home with all this money, and now how do you explain that door, Izuku? What kind of person reps a door in half without a quirk? Izuku finishes the statement for her. Something cold spikes in his gut, then spreads until his entire body just feels numb and he can feel his brain buzzing behind his eyes. The fight drains out of his mother in those seconds and the tears start to fall. Considering this is their first fight in his entire life, Izuku can't help but think this was a long time coming. That thought doesn't make it hurt any less. For a few minutes, they stare at one another. Izuku doesn't feel anything, not even the frosty wind blowing into their apartment, but the dam on his mother's emotions finally crumbles. She collapses onto the couch, sobbing into the blanket as she tries to form words. When he realizes they can't talk like this, Izuku turns and walks out. Somewhere about 20 minutes from his house is a hardware store that he wandered into back in August. At the time he'd been looking for gloves and a mask to help with his beach cleanup. Instead of actually buying anything, he'd done a bit of work for the owner's wife, Smith Sakura. Chatting with her about quirks had turned into another one of his late evenings out and he'd become a frequent helper around the shop ever since. Jason Smith is like the Americans out of a television show. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed, short beard, and constantly shaggy. Izuku might have been a little worried. The American never seemed to care about his appearance. He wanders through the front door in a haze, glances at the section full of doors, and then shuffles towards the counter. Smith-san takes a single look at him and hops the counter to grab Izuku by the shoulders. Yo, Izuku-kun, what happened? Are you okay? Smith-san, Izuku responds in English out of habit, though the words feel strange on his tongue. Can I buy things? Need a door. Do you need a door? What happened? Hey, come here. Izuku is sitting in a chair running a hand over his cheek before he even realizes that Jason led him here. Talk to me, little guy, what happened? Got in a fight with mom. Izuku takes a breath and tries to focus, though it just makes his chest hurt. Tripped and break the front door. I braked. Broke, I think wait, you tripped and broke your front door. And your mom, what did she do? Why were you fighting? The door. Izuku blinks as Smith swims harshly into focus, then shakes his head to try and clear the shock from his brain. Mom slapped me. Jason exhales harshly through his nose, and Izuku realizes quickly that that's probably not the best way to say it. He switches over to Japanese, doing his best to keep it brief. She's worried about me. I think I'm taking drugs or something. I'm fine, I just need to fix the door. Mom isn't feeling well lately, and it's cold. He says quickly, waiting for Jason to nod in response. Alright. Let's grab a door and see what I can do. I'll drive you back, okay? You're not taking a door and the tools all back to your place wearing a shirt and shorts. Too cold for that. Lem just get Sakura, alright. Izuku nods. Jason's wife is native Japanese, after all. The man isn't the best with their language, despite living here for 3 years or so. Sakura always says that he's a bit slow when it comes to those things, but he's an amazing craftsman. The drive back to his apartment takes about as long as it did to jog over to Smith's shop, and when they arrive the couple spare him a glance. Yeah, I'd say you braked it. Smith snorts. Sakura-san makes tea and sits with his mother while they fix the door. Jason has to stop him from ripping pieces off the frame and shows him how to remove the hinges with a drill. Izuku follows the directions easily, smoothly, but he doesn't actually remember any of it when they're done. After admiring their handiwork, Jason heads to the kitchen and sits with his wife and Izuku's mother. Izuku bows to the pair and mutters a thank you before he heads to his room. -0. Before school starts up, his mother takes him to a physician. First things first, his mother stubbornly demands that they do every test they possibly can. Quirk factor, drug test, fitness, health, DNA. Izuku sits quietly for the entire ordeal, listening to the doctor try to steer his mother away from all the procedures that keep piling up. They dig up old records, but his mother refuses them. She's nearly crying when the doctor finally sighs and relents. Izuku is a bit glad that the empty feeling stuck with him. Stripping down to his underwear in front of the doctor, and his mother barely registers until she makes a little noise and the doctor's pen skitters across the clipboard. He floats through the sample taking and testing until he's told to put his pants on and blinks when the doctor shines a light in his eyes. Midoriya-kun, would you mind telling me how you're feeling? I'm fine. I haven't been sick in months. Izuku mutters. The doctor hums and pulls out the little hammer used for testing reflexes. That's fine, but what about emotionally? Physically? Are you feeling tired or faint? Maybe you're experiencing mood swings. Not just tired, but I've been working out a lot. Made a habit of it since April, since All Might. I've had some trouble focusing recently, though. I see the doctor taps his leg a few times with the hammer, but he barely manages a twitch. Eventually he sighs and rubs his finger on Izuku's knee, right beneath the kneecap. I'm going to have to hit Midoriya-kun a little harder, Midoriya-kun. Perfectly normal if you're feeling tired and having trouble focusing. The jolt runs through his leg, from his hip to his ankle, and the doctor yelps when Izuku's leg straightens in a blur. Some papers on the counter flutter. Well, you're healthy. The doctor chuckles nervously, moving to check the other leg. -0. 2 weeks later, his mother drags him out of school early and Izuku is manhandled back into the doctor's office. His mother, despite being even tinier than he is these days, can only drag him by the hand, but considering how much force she puts behind it, there's really no other word for it. Well, we've got all the tests here. At your request, we ran the DNA and quirk factor exams, though that's usually secondary to a physical exam. So, here are the results. Izuku's mother takes the folder, then looks up at the doctor as he smiles kindly and looks over towards Izuku. Before I get into that, though, Midoriya-kun, would you mind removing your shirt? Now that he's a little more lucid, Izuku blushes under the attention. He's been looking at enough bodybuilding videos and health websites recently that he knows he's not scrawny anymore. Even though he never had any plans to follow in All Might's footsteps exactly, he can't help but wonder how anyone can stand wearing spandex all day. He'd be lying if he said that he doesn't catch himself running a hand over his new muscles every so often, even if it's embarrassing to show it off. Seeing All Might up close left him with a constant reminder of just how far he has to go, but it's nice not feeling useless. At the very least, he's strong enough to do some physical labor. The doctor pokes his shoulder with the cap of his pen and hums quietly. Do you lift weights, Midoriya? Or do any kind of training with a professional? No, not really. I've kind of been researching as I go, putting together a routine based on what I wanted to do. But everything online says weightlifting could be bad if you start too early. I do a little bit of community service, but that's it. Well, that's very good. You're nearly 15, though, so weightlifting isn't going to affect you badly. Honestly, there's a risk of bulking up too much before you reach your full maturity, but in your case, I'd say you can do quite a bit before you're in any danger. Izuku nods, making a mental note to ask one of the teachers if he can use the weights at school before he graduates. The doctor pokes him again before he pulls off his glasses and leans back to face Izuku's mother. So, about the tests. Midoriya-kun is in fact quirkless. Everything comes back negative and his drug tests are clean as well. In fact, your son is probably the single healthiest person I've checked up on in the past several years. What's odd is that he's managed to reach the levels of some professional athletes without doing any weight training. His resting heart rate is somewhere around 50 beats per minute, dropping as low as the high 40s, and the density of your muscle mass is a bit frightening considering your age, but not unrealistic, I suppose. You did throw several of us for a loop, considering your last checkup was barely more than a year ago. The man chuckles weakly, despite the air growing somewhat frigid. Well, my only recommendation is to change how much protein you're eating and maybe consider taking some vitamins. Izuku keeps his eyes on the floor as his mother receives the news, and he does his best to keep them away from her face until they finally reach home. Without really talking about it, they both shuffle into the kitchen and settle there, letting the silence start to boil. He waits for the inevitable, and eventually she breaks the silence. I see his mom start to cry, in that moment, inflate something in Izuku's chest until it's hard to breathe. He's very much aware of how easily the pair of them tear up and cry, but this time his mother is fighting back real tears, and it's his fault. At some point, he'd started hiding things and stopped thinking of her feelings. Izuku, I'm sorry, Mom. Izuku's fists tighten till his knuckles turn white against the grain of the table. I didn't think everything was fine, but I guess I've been keeping things to myself too much. No, Izuku, his mother blew her nose as the tears began flowing more heavily. I was just worried about you, Izuku. You're my baby boy, and all this, after that slime villain mess, I thought maybe you were trying to be a hero, taking something. I'm not going to be a hero, Mom. Izuku snaps. His throat burns even more when she flinches, eyes widening in shock at the statement. I didn't tell you everything about what happened. To her credit, she stays silent as he tells her everything that happened. All Might's verdict, the hero's scolding, and his decision to try and get stronger. It takes less time than he thought it would. For such a massive impact on his life, the retelling only takes 10 minutes. I'm not going to be a hero, Mom. The exercise, the fitness, I'm just trying something. Maybe I can help people, like I've been doing. And I'm going to a normal high school I even showed you. He trails off because he knows that somehow he hadn't done enough. I thought you were a sidekick, illegally. Inko whispers, clutching her hands tight, or a villain, maybe I don't know, Izuku. I was just so scared and we never talked about it. You want to be a hero, or being. I'm quirkless, Mom. We tested it twice. Izuku croaks, I've given up on being a hero. So, don't worry about that, okay? Izuku, I'm sorry, she wheezes under her breath. I'm so sorry, baby. Don't be, Mom. Izuku cracks a smile even though he wants to cry. I'll be fine, okay? So, don't worry anymore. I'm gonna make you proud, no matter what. I'm always proud, Izuku. Inko hisses, lunging to grab his hand across the table. Even when I'm mad, I'm so proud of you. You're the best son I could have ever asked for. Izuku chuckles weakly, and the tears start to fade from her eyes. There's a less depressing angle to her eyes now. I swear, Izuku. No matter what you do, from here on, I'll support you with everything I have. We're a family. Even if you tear through the door every other day, we'll make it work. They both laugh a bit at that. Her determination doesn't disappear though. I love you, Izuku. More than anything in the world. This time, his smile is real and wide enough to hurt. I love you too, Mom. More than anything. -0. For the next week, Izuku's eyes linger on the door. He's still not entirely sure how he ripped the door in half or how he crushed the doorknob the way he did, but things have been dark. Now that he and his mom have restored the warmth of their apartment, it's all he can think about. The doctor said he's quirkless. He's been tested twice. But this leads to a new problem. Izuku has no friends. Outside of his mother and the people he helps out occasionally, there's no one he can turn to for help figuring things out. And if he tries without someone there to save him, well, he doesn't exactly want to think about that. So he waits for a week. When Sunday rolls around, he finishes off breakfast quickly and does the dishes, then sits down across from his mother. Hey, Mom. Do you mind helping me with an experiment? She zeroes in on him immediately when he says it. He can't help but wonder if she's been thinking about the same thing. What kind of experiment, honey? I don't know how I broke the door. Izuku can see her expression twist up as he starts, so he barrels forward before she can say anything. I mean, I'm quirkless, but that didn't make any sense. So, I was hoping you could come down to the beach and watch me try something out. Izuku, are you sure about this? His mom looks worried. Not horrified or scared, just worried. Izuku takes that as a win, because he's kind of worried too. Yeah? Please. I just need answers. After a moment, she nods and sighs. 20 minutes later they're on the way down to the beach, chatting nervously. She hasn't seen Dagaba in months, and it's not like many people other than Izuku go there. Izuku pauses on the stairs when she looks at the trash and makes a little happy noise. You've done a lot of work, I don't really know, it's just a little bit here and there. Izuku rolls up his sleeves and wanders towards one of the piles. So I'm just gonna go for broke here, okay? Just be careful, honey. Izuku isn't sure what he's expecting. He glances over the trash until he finds something big, a bike, and he pulls it out single-handedly. Gradually he finds bigger and bigger things in the trash, then tosses them behind him. The little noises his mother makes sort of fade into the background as he starts getting frustrated. Eventually, he decides that playing it safe isn't going to answer his question. His mother makes a much louder noise when he stops in front of the fridge. It's larger than he is, nearly twice his size, and still standing solidly. Even with all the weight training in the world, which Izuku has never done in his life, lifting the fridge would still be near impossible. Izuku, what are you thinking? I'm just thinking. That one looks a lot bigger than the other ones, honey, maybe. Don't worry mom, I shouldn't even be able to get it off the ground. He grins in spite of himself. Even trying is completely ridiculous, but that's what got him here, right? And if he can get it off the ground even a little bit, then he can be proud of himself. Then they can go home, and he can go back to being normal. Getting the right squat form took him nearly a week, but he falls into it easily now. His mother squeaks as he puts his fingers under either side of the trashed machine and grunts, putting as much of the weight as he can in his legs. The breath he's holding falls out of him as he stands up, holding the fridge in his hands, as if it's the easiest thing in the world. His legs burn some, but his lower back is fine. Izuku. I got it, I'm fine, really. He grunts as he shifts the machine in his hands and lifts higher, pushing it up over his head and onto his shoulders. When he turns to his mom, her eyes are bugging out of her head again. He's not fine. He's better than fine, but that's a problem in and of itself, isn't it? First the door, and now this. All the optimism in the world can't help him justify this after less than a year of working out. Because now he's not just a quirkless kid anymore. Izuku, what are you doing? Put that down this instant. I can barely even feel it. Izuku grunts, then leans the machine over until he's got one hand under the tall side and he lowers his free hand. Balance isn't terribly hard, and despite his expectations his wrist doesn't hurt. See? I'm fine. He squawks as she faints, dropping the fridge to the sand behind him as he runs to catch her. -0. The next day he catches the PE coach in the office. She gives him a look, one that promises she wants nothing to do with him, but he sits down and stays until she finally relents. I was hoping I could try out the bench press after school. His teacher arches an eyebrow and he scratches the back of his neck. I was hoping you might be able to supervise me if I tried out the bench press. If you have time. Depends on how long you need. I have about a half hour. She says. I take it you've been keeping up your workouts. Why yeah, something like that. He hasn't passed out in the gym since the first time he collapsed, but she doesn't seem any happier about this. I just don't have the money for a gym membership and I wanted to see how strong I'd gotten before I graduate. But Ori, I can respect this whole self-improvement thing you're trying. Really. But what are you after, kid? You're quirkless. Are you looking for fitness to change that? I know, sensei. I just need your help this once. He kind of wants to cry. But that would be really uncomfortable and he's so close to never having to come back. Right now, he needs answers more than anything. Fine. I'll supervise you for a few tries on the bench press, but don't slack off, okay? The woman sighs as she grabs her keys and trudges out. Izuku follows her quickly, ignoring the looks people shoot his way. The gym is small, since their school isn't exactly the best. But it has some decent old equipment and all Izuku needs to do is, okay, he has no idea what he's doing. But he's doing something. How much can the press bar take, sensei? We never put on more than 200, but she glares a little more harshly when he waits for her to continue, but grudgingly mutters, the max on the bars is 400. Thanks, sensei. Izuku decides not to waste time like he did at the beach. Starting slow won't get him anywhere closer to the answers he needs. He ignores the noise of disbelief from his sensei when he stacks 400 on either side of the bar and looks back to her expectantly. I can't spot that kid, even if you somehow did manage to grow a quirk. Is there anyone who can? Izuku gives her his best pleading look. The look she gives him could kill, but luckily her quirk is minor muscle supplementation, not laser eyes. After a minute she throws her hands into the air and storms out. I'll get Kanekm. Kanekm-sensei is actually very impressive without his suit jacket on, but Izuku shelves that thought as the man gives him a rundown on how he should be lifting the bench press. After giving the man a heartfelt thank you, Izuku takes a few breaths and puts a little force behind his hands. The bar lurches off the stand. Kanekm-sensei leaps to catch it, only for it to stabilize a moment later. Izuku mutters out some hurried assurances as he stares up at the bar, reveling in the fact that he can feel some strain beneath the weight. Maybe he's getting addicted to the pain if he's enjoying it after going without for like 2 weeks. Umping the bar up and down 10 times puts a healthy burn in his arms before he racks the weight and stands up. His teachers don't have anything to say in response. Izuku takes a breath, then looks at the bar and frowns. He remembers the fridge balanced on one hand and wonders if maybe he can do even more. There's still time, after all. He grabs the bar with one hand, planting his knee squarely on the bench, and despite Kanekm-sensei's warning he pulls. Getting the bar off the rack takes effort, enough that his wrist pops a bit and aches pleasantly, proving that he's not All Might. Just an inhumanly strong quirkless kid. Before he replaces the bar, he lifts it up like a dumbbell once, twice, 3 times. The sound of the bar hitting the rack is really satisfying. But before he can worry about adding weightlifting to his routine, he's got some explaining to do. -0. When his mother reads over his complete routine, the one he does on Sunday mornings, when he has no school and a full day to study and work out, she gapes at him. "You were just working out," she mutters, shaking a couple aspirin from the bottle with shaking hands. "You were actually just working out, but Izuku, this is beyond human." Izuku shrugs. "I didn't really think about that till I'd already started doing it." They share a look, both of them equally uncertain. "But it's not like I can do anything about it now, right?" -0. The beach cleanup goes much faster now that he's not dancing around the edges. Which, surprisingly, teaches him something else. Jagged metal apparently does nothing to his hands, despite using a healthy amount of lotion and hand soap. Nothing cuts him during his little trips into the disease-ridden beach, and he doesn't even catch a cold. Just before Izuku graduates middle school, Dagaba Beach is a sparkling paradise. Izuku eventually decides on a high school that has a large and competitive academics department, as well as a popular sports program. Graduation is quiet. No one looks at him twice. Kaken doesn't acknowledge his existence. Everything goes perfectly. One thing about graduating is an abundance of free time. Before anything else, he tears down his old routine and looks into more rigorous workouts. Push-ups are joined by fingertip push-ups and handstands. He throws a few exercises in for his lower abs and lengthens the times and reps on just about everything. For pure amusement, since it's tested by phys ed at the beginning of every year, he throws in sideways jumps for a few minutes. His first day trying the new routine sets his rep count at 200 all around, some reaching close to 300, with 5 minutes for handstands, planks, and core. Then he decides to put a little more effort into his run and accidentally leaves a small crater in the sidewalk outside his apartment complex, which earns him a scolding and another incredulous stare. Despite his hope, he decides to cap his runs at 20 kilometers and never, ever runs faster than a hearty jog. Shortly after his graduation, an apartment complex gets decimated by a villain attack. After a brief internal debate, he ducks under the line of construction tape and mentions offhandedly that he'll help with the larger chunks of concrete as long as they don't mind. There's a bit of a ruckus since he's a middle schooler and he's just running around, but when he mentions community service, the manager of the site gives Izuku his card and clears him as long as they have parents' permission. After the first day, no one bats an eye seeing him running around with a hard hat, though some of them don't really get over seeing him haul rubble twice his size off the piles. -0. Izuku likes to think that he's come a long way since he met All Might. Looking back, it's painfully obvious how much an otaku he was, and maybe that's not something to be ashamed of, but at the same time he really should have gone about it differently. Between his working out and his whatever it is, he's half convinced that All Might infected him with some sort of superhuman virus, because Izuku still has no idea what kind of quirk lets you be the greatest superhero of all time without a freaking stomach. He's learned how to actually get out of his personal space and talk to people. Sure, helping people out and making small talk isn't the same as making friends, that art still eludes him, but it's progress. Nowadays his old hero merch is stashed away in the closet, where it can't bring up old memories or collect enough dust to wear down the paint. He still keeps up with heroes on the net and makes profiles after school, but it's tempered with a need to do more than just figure out what people are doing with their quirks. Some of the textbooks he's picked up are books on psychology and history, as well as some war strategy books. Even if no one at his new school knows him, he doesn't take his old hobby to school or talk about heroes more than necessary. His fingers still itch to be writing something down, but after losing 2 or 3 pencils to the ceiling as a result of his twirling habit and his unchecked strength, he makes sure to fill his class time with studying and his free periods with more studying. He's still invisible. No new bullies have followed him to this new school, and no one really has time to care about his quirklessness since he's number 3 in his class. Despite all his progress, everyone else is still everyone else. Villains are still a thing, but people usually dissolve into traffic and blog posts when it comes to chaos and anarchy. Instead of becoming victims, victims have the title of poor bastards. Even if Izuku spends a decent chunk of his spare time cleaning up after villain attacks, he's up to 2 construction sites now, and they're asking if he wants to sign on with a company. He hasn't actually stumbled onto an attack since the Mudman incident. He's walking home from school 3 days into the first term when the storefront on his left explodes. It's surreal, standing in the smoke with musical sheet metal blocking everything else from his ears. All around him people panic and run away screaming. He blinks and glances towards the building, wondering if anyone. 2 villains are there now, wide-eyed and screaming at him. One has a schoolgirl clutched in his arms, gun pointed either at her head or at Izuku's chest, while the partner has a plastic bag full of cash dangling from his gun hand and a case of beer tucked up under his left arm. Sadly, whatever they're trying to say is lost on him since, they just blew up the damn building. He points a finger at his chest, still a bit dizzy, since his hearing is just now swimming back into existence, and the villains are now waving their arms at him while screaming. At least he thinks they're screaming at him. The flash of light catches his eye, and suddenly the world stutters into slow motion. He's on the back foot when he glances down, reaching out lazily and snatching something out of the air. When he holds it up, it takes a second to register that the little piece of metal in his hand is most likely a bullet that the thugs just tried to shoot him. When he looks back at the villains, they're gone, sprinting down the street as their hostage stumbles forward and collapses into Izuku's arms. Police swarm the scene instantly, taking the girl from his arms and asking him questions, even though he still can't really hear. After a few of them have all tried getting through, he shrugs and holds up the bullet. "I think they shot me." The rest of the incident is a whirl. Paramedics and police are motioning him over to the ambulance so they can check him over while his hearing comes back. Apparently, some heroes caught the villains before they got further than a block, so that's something. Just as things start fading back into perspective and Izuku can pick the buzz of the sirens out of the wine, the hostage stumbles over to him and bows, saying something that's too garbled for him to understand as her parents drag her away. The paramedic lady looks him over with a stern expression, tapping him all over and checking his pulse before she asks about his hearing. It's come back just enough for him to answer questions, so he tells her how he was walking by when the building blew up. Before they let him go, he has to give the police his statement and his phone number. They send him along with the assurance that he'll be questioned again later. His mother takes one look at him when he walks in and frowns, though she doesn't panic. Izuku can't blame her, considering his uniform is shredded. They'll need to get another one. Despite how much Izuku wants to shower, Izuku sits at the table and gives his mom the rundown. Afterwards she looks at his arm and gives him the most disbelieving look ever. "You're really okay? How is that even possible?" "I've got no idea." Izuku shrugs, looks down at his hand and opens his fingers a few times. A soft snort escapes him as his mother pokes his forearm and hums. "You feel normal, not bomb-proof." She groans and runs her hands up into her hair, looking at him with wide, tired eyes. "Izuku, what is happening to you?" "I'm just as surprised as you are." Izuku grins a little bit because what else can he do? "Guess this explains why I never got sick from the beach, huh? Well, I suppose I don't need to worry about you so much anymore seeing as you can catch bullets and walk away from bombs." Inko sighs and Izuku can't help but take one of her hands in his own. "Hey, mom, you're taking this really well, considering I told you I'd support you, honey." His mom smiles at him for a moment before she sighs and tightens her fingers around his. "Honestly, even if this is all crazy, I can't help being a little bit relieved. You're safe and no one got hurt. I really expected you to panic when I said I got shot." Izuku grumbles, grinning as she rolls her eyes and swats his arm. "Who wouldn't? Speaking of which, how'd you even see the bullet?" "That isn't normal, Izuku." "I don't know. It seemed pretty normal. Like, it was fast," but Izuku frowned. "I guess everything would seem normal while I'm moving at average speed, but maybe my perception sped up with the adrenaline, or my mind just doesn't bother overclocking axons for something as slow as daily life. If I could see and catch the bullet then I was moving at relatively the same speed and my brain was perceiving the bullet somehow, though that's theoretically impossible. Bullets move faster than." "Izuku. Eh?" Izuku blinks as his mother pinches his ear. "Was I doing it again?" "MMHMM. Look, honey, let's not worry about it. Whatever this is, just be careful." She frowns, but Izuku grins. At least this time, they're talking. He knows she's not mad because he really couldn't have done anything about this one. At least he's not alone. -0, the police called him the next day. Actually, they're waiting for him after school, and he's not really sure what people think when he gets in the back of the cruiser. Some of them heard he was caught up in the attack, hence his brand new uniform, but most will talk later. He's retold his story for the third time when a man in a trench coat arrives. Izuku isn't sure what to make of him, other than this is probably way beneath his job code. "You're, Midoriya." "Midoriya Izuku?" the man asks, sitting down in a chair pulled from somewhere. Izuku nods and sighs. "I'm Detective Tsukauchi. Sorry, but I just need you to repeat the story one more time, okay? Start with your details, name, the date, your date of birth, quirk." When Izuku says quirkless, everyone stares at him for a moment before the officer waves at him to continue. Once he's finished, the detective stares at him, then looks at the file. "Could you, Tsukauchi frowns, then sighs and rubs a hand down his face. "Could you say your details again? You have a lie detection quirk." Izuku blinks. The detective opens his mouth a few times, then finally coughs and nods. "Something like that. But I need you to repeat. Would my doctor's office help more?" Izuku frowns. "They just did another test a few months ago. That will work." Tsukauchi nods. "I guess you can't tell me about your quirk." Izuku tries, smiling a bit. The detective snorts and shakes his head. "Sorry, Midoriya-kun, but no. Police secrets." He stands up. Izuku laughs weakly, both because the man is smiling, and that's great, but he really wants to know about that quirk. Instead, he's driven home and left on the curb in front of the complex with a friendly wave from the officer who'd caught him during the attack. His mother laughs when he tells the story. "At least I'm not the only one who didn't know what to do." Thanks for watching my video, see you next time, till then sayonara.